Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the son of Robert Kennedy and nephew of late US President John F. Kennedy. He was taking part in a dialogue on the conflict resolution in 21st century at the Naropa Festival 2016. An attorney and a dedicated environmentalist, he is the president of Waterkeeper Alliance, a US-based NGO. Kennedy, in conversation with Newzstreet, said that the protection of Himalayan waterways and river system should be of paramount importance as 40% of the people living on Earth depends on them.
Well, I started working for a small group of fishermen who were trying to clean up the Hudson because their livelihoods were being destroyed, their property values, their recreation. And I recognized from the beginning that we're not protecting the environment just for the sake of the fishes and the birds. We're protecting it because we recognize that nature is the infrastructure of our communities. And that if we want to meet our obligation as a generation, as a nation, as a civilization, which is to create communities for our children that provide them with the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment and prosperity and good health as the communities that our parents gave us, we've got to start by protecting our environmental infrastructure, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the wildlife, the fisheries, the public lands, those things that are not susceptible to private property ownership, but by their nature are the assets of the whole community, what we call in Western law the commons or the commonwealth or the public trust assets. And for me, I recognize that this is the most important civil right. My family has always been involved in the battle for civil rights and human rights, but there's no more important civil right than the right to breathe fresh air and drink water. These are what our survival depends on. You'll hear a lot of times from the big polluters and from their indentured servants in our political process that we have to choose between a clean, wholesome environment and a strong economy, but that's a false choice. In 100% of the situations, good environmental policy is identical to good economic policy if we want to measure our economy, and this is how we ought to be measuring it, based upon how it produces jobs and the dignity of jobs over the long term, over the generations, and how it preserves the value of the assets of our community. If, on the other hand, we want to do what the big oil companies and coal companies and chemical companies and the other polluters are asking us to do, which is to treat the planet as if it were a business in liquidation, convert our natural resources to cash as quickly as possible, have a few years of pollution-based prosperity, we can generate an instantaneous cash flow and the illusion of a prosperous economy, and we can make a few people billionaires by impoverishing and poisoning the rest of us. But our children are going to pay for our joyride, and they're going to pay for it with denuded landscapes, poor health, and huge cleanup costs that are going to amplify over time and that they'll never be able to pay. Environmental injury is deficit spending. It's a way of loading the costs of our generation's prosperity onto the backs of our children. And one of the things that I've done over the past 3.5 decades as an environmental advocate is to constantly go around and confront this argument that an investment in the environment is a diminishment of our nation's wealth. It doesn't diminish our wealth. It's an investment in infrastructure. The same as investing in telecommunications or road construction. It's an investment we have to make if we're going to ensure economic vitality for our generation and for future generations. I think His Holiness is a prophet not only for men and women of the Drupka lineage, but also all Buddhas and all of the religions of humankind. And the reason for that is because his is an ethical message. It's a message of service. It's a message of compassion. And he says those parts of the Buddhist lineage that say we need to achieve enlightenment through meditation and through prayer, that those are very important. But we can't ignore service. That service is probably the most direct path to God. And he has been very active in instilling that notion and that ethic throughout and talking about it and explaining his vision and saying that that vision encompasses everybody. It's not a small tent. It's not excluding women. It's not excluding gay people. It's not excluding people who look different or think different than us. That it includes all of the people of humanity, and that we all have an obligation to each other, and that sin is an injury to another human being, and it's an injury to community. You can't escape responsibility for the fate of mankind. That all of us have a responsibility to help our brothers, to help our sisters, to show compassion, to show kindness, to include other people. That we have to avoid the seduction of the notion that we can advance ourselves as individuals by leaving our brothers and sisters behind. That we all have to go forward together. We all have that responsibility. And that's what he's teaching to all of us, and it's so important today.